Super. All right. Does this work? Yeah? All right. Good. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session. My name is Claire Wenger. I'm an investment director at Swisscom Ventures. And with me here on stage today, we have Enzo Wälchli, the Chief Commercial Officer of ANYbotics. And ANYbotics is one of our portfolio companies where we led the Series A round back in 2021. And I've had the pleasure to work with the company closely since then, and including bringing Enzo on board to scale the sales organization at ANYbotics, and he did an amazing job. And yeah, today we will talk about finding product market fit, about building a commercial engine in Deeptech, and experimenting also with AI tools to make sales even better and faster. And thank you so much, Enzo, really for coming here and sharing your valuable experience with also young new tech founders. And before we start, we will shortly show a video about ANYbotics so that we all know what actually Enzo is selling and what ANYbotics is doing.
Die ANYbotics AG aus Zürich setzt mit dem vierbeinigen Inspektionsroboter Animal neue Maßstäbe in der Industrieautomatisierung. So navigiert der Roboter autonom durch Industrieanlagen und sammelt präzise Daten. Dabei bewältigt er zahlreiche Hindernisse wie Treppen oder enge Räume. Zudem übernimmt der Roboter Aufgaben, bei denen Menschen sonst gefährlichen Materialien ausgesetzt werden könnten. Bei der weltweiten Expansion lässt sich das Unternehmen einerseits von den fokussierten Industriebereichen Energie, Bergbau, Chemikalien, Öl und Gas leiten. Andererseits richtet es sich nach den Bedürfnissen seiner multinational tätigen Schlüsselkunden, die ihm großes Wachstumspotenzial bieten. Für einen nahen Kundenservice und technischen Support hat ANYbotics ein globales Partnernetzwerk aufgebaut. Seit 2024 sichert ein eigener Standort in San Francisco den direkten Zugang zum größten Robotermarkt der Welt. Dieser dürfte bereits in wenigen Jahren zum wichtigsten Absatzmarkt werden.
Good, great. So let's dive into the first question, Enzo. Take us back to when you first started at ANYbotics. What was your first impression of the sales and the commercial setup?
Probably the first impression was there wasn't really a setup. When I joined, there was one sales guy that joined, I think, 3 months before me, or 6 months before me, and before it was just founder-led sales, basically. And the whole commercial department was this one salesperson, one marketing person that got us all the website and the basics up and running, and a couple of field engineers that actually deployed the robots or did the POCs at the time with the customers. So really it's coming in and basically having a blank sheet of paper to design an organization, and that was quite exciting in the last couple of years.
And so was there already kind of a go-to-market strategy at that point, or was it really an amazing technology trying to find the question to a solution?
I would say somewhere in between. I think the founding team has done quite a great job as a ETH spin-off and kind of tech-led company to already very early on focus on certain customer segments and some problems to actually then take the technology and build a product out of it. Because when I joined, it was 2021. The company was founded in 2016. The research started in, I don't know, 2010 or 29 or so. So already for like 10 years, research was ongoing, product was being built. And during that time, the founding team, even when still at ETH, they were approached by customers saying, hey, this is so cool, the videos that you post online, can you make a product out of it? Because we would like to use that in harsh environments. And that was then the starting point to do some segmentation, say, okay, we go into heavy industry, where you have dangerous, it's the 3D, dull, dangerous and dirty situations where you can have robots that automate certain things. So that was already kind of a plan there, but then obviously it was still a lot of research sales. So when I joined, it was really about focusing, how do you tap into those markets, how do you position yourself, how do you start selling, who do you contact, how do you build a repeatable kind of system there. So there was, I think we had a good starting point from a product perspective, and then a lot of commercial to add in the last couple of years.
So let's dive into this, finding this product market fit, because we have amazing spin-offs coming out of ETH and EPFL, but it's always an amazing technology. And some kind of in the early stages struggle with really finding this product market fit. So in your experience, what are the signs that a deep tech company has found product market fit?
Whenever I talk to people that put science around it, there you can put that into a lot of different, I would say, metrics. The growth metrics, usage metrics, word of mouth, many of those things. I think that the interesting thing when you are in that position is that when you start, you push something into the market. So you sell, you need to have good playbooks, sales processes, and you need to follow, be very creative and do a lot of that stuff that you can actually get the product to someone to buy it. I think when you found product market fit, it starts to turn around, that there's a certain pull effect coming in where customers call you and they want something from you because they feel that there's something around that they need. And I think I think someone at one point told me kind of, the moment you get product market fit, you will know you will have product market fit because it just feels very differently. And I think that's on very different components. That's the sales motion, so how much push versus pull is it? That's an expansion motion that you don't usually have without product market fit. So the customer that buy once, buy again, buy more. So you will see that, so you can accelerate. There's also a certain usage change, because in the beginning it's about how do I do this, how does that work, why does it not work? Deeptech very often is, why does it not work actually, because you sold me something else and now get there. And then that also changes in the questions from, okay, not how do I do that, but what else could I do with it? Because now what I want to do, it works. What else can I now do with the solution? How can I expand the usage of the solution? And so there's many different factors. There's word of mouth. There's certain brand visibility that you will get. You will have, as a young company, usually, when you're 10, 20 people, 50 people, you talk to these very large corporates. Usually when you're in B2B enterprise sales, you have both customers but also partners. We talk to Siemens Energy, Schlumberger, Equans, all these very large companies. When you get there and you're like this small startup, they're like, okay, what do you have? What do you want? Kind of. And eventually when you have something that works, it turns around. They're like, we need you because we also have a strategy and it requires what you have be part of that strategy. And that level, the discussions kind of change. And so there's many different I would say, tipping points where you can feel that. There's not this one certain things, but you will feel it. Okay, great, nice.
And if the product market fit is not there yet, how should a founder, what should he make differently?
I think what most companies, and it doesn't really matter if it's tech-led or not really deep tech, I think what most companies get wrong is that they stop understanding the customer too early. Because everyone now knows that you need to ask the customer questions, and then you try to figure out what is the problem, and then the customer tells you the problem, and then you're like, okay, I understood the problem, but you have not understood the problem. You have to ask more and more and go there and see it again, and then you learn and you iterate, you build something, you go there again, and you uncover that actually you misunderstood the problem, and then you have to do it again. And I think until you've done that many times, so that you can come in and you can talk about the problem better than the customer can, until that moment you haven't really understood what is needed. And I think that focus is usually too late or not existing at all, and then people build something on a kind of artificial understanding of what's needed. They don't go deep enough, and then it's up to chance whether you just pick the right thing you do.
And do you, in your experience, do you feel that potential customers are open to help you in these early stages of exploration?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's obviously different ways of how to do that, but you need to frame it the right way. when you have a technology, very often you start with a good technology, and there's innovation teams that their job is to get the coolest technology. That's and scout for new technology. So they're excited when they see something that potentially fits into what they need. And if you build good relationships early on with some of those customers, you can come back and say, hey, now actually I want to understand it even further. Can we have, I don't want to sell you something when I talk to you again. Next time I just want to understand. And if you do that the right way, people that know something usually like to talk about what they know. So if you go to a blue-collar worker, for us, when the robot walks around, you talk to the actual shift manager, and that person will tell you everything because he's proud that you ask, because not very often people come and ask, they want to sell them something. So I think, yes, if you really are interested, then you will always find people that share with you.
And if you would advise now an early stage tech founder on finding product market fit, what are approaches to systematic? How can this be explored systematically?
I think it's so that there's many different frameworks of what do you need to have that you can scale. So obviously there's a certain, I would say, problem solution fit, so that you understand what the problem is and you build a product that actually fits to that. There's also a message fit where you kind of make sure that what you talk about, how you talk about it, that also kind of fits what the market needs. So I think going into unpacking product market fit into different components, I think that's probably a good starting point. And there are many books from people written in Switzerland, but also internationally, on how you unpack product market fit and what do you need to do. So there's a business model component usually, that you sell it in the right way, that companies want to buy it. There's a certain lingo that you need to use, that you can get there. You need to know the right people. You need to unpack the market, segment it. And I think going very strategically on all these different blocks and say, okay, we've understood what we need to build, great. Have we understood how we can sell it? Okay, great. Have we understood how we can then keep the customer? So retention. So there's many different factors to really go into that. And using such a model when you start, I think is usually good, because it gives you a lot of different, I would say, questions to start with. And there's more questions than most of those models do. But it's a good starting point. And if you don't even answer those, then probably it's going to be hard to really find the correct strategy.
Good. So let's move on to another topic, which is more than winning these enterprise customers. So a little bit of your tactics there. So how did you approach building really trust relationship with these big industrial customers like the oil and gas, chemicals, energy companies?
I find that one probably of the most important things is that you're very honest and up front with them. When you're building something new, we built something, we've been building it for a while, and it's kind of selling the future. And if you need to be very transparent about that the video that you see 4 years ago, we kind of had a similar video, but obviously the robot didn't work as good as on the video yet. But when you talk to customers, you need to be clear that this is where we're going, but it's going to be a journey to get there. And if you want to come in now, you can shape the journey, but you will also need to be part of the ride, that not everything is going to be working very smoothly. And if you're up for that, great, join us, and you need to pay for it, because we can't just do it for free. But it's a decision to make. If you're not up for that, you want a solution that just works flawlessly, you need to wait. Maybe the solution will not exactly be what you need, because you didn't participate in the process, but then you didn't have any effort. And if you're really upfront about that, you're really interested about it, and you prioritize the early customers that we got, the kind of early adopters, we put a lot of energy into connecting with them on very different levels. So you had this, operational connections, but you also had the management layer connection, where checking in with them and making sure that you own up all the stuff that's not working, and you go there and say, okay, we know that's all what's not working, but that's what improved in the last 3 months, and that's what's going to improve the next 3 months. Do we still have a ground to work on? That gives a lot of trust and a lot of, I think, good openness to keep doing. I think another important thing is also that you define certain lines that you, from a business perspective, you don't want to cross. So we very early on, when I joined, we stopped doing any free POCs or demos, because there's a technology. If you're interested in it, you pay for it. And if you're not interested in it, you wait until you're interested in it, because it's we only have one demo robot, so we can't just send it to you if you're not interested to buy. You need to actually show some commitments and stuff like that. So doing free POCs is probably one of the biggest mistakes, doing it too long. That also establishes credibility, because it shows that you believe in what you're doing, that you can actually put the price tag on it. It's this famous saying that something that doesn't cost anything doesn't have any value. It's not always true, but it has some truth in it. And I think that's also something early on to kind of be clear about.
Great. So very important mistake. Are there other mistakes that you experienced where that killed deals, and then how did you kind of turn them around?
I think overselling is probably one of the most difficult things. I did that very big time when I joined ANYbotics. I think one of the first deals, I joined and we were like, okay, let's get a really good first quarter in, and we sold to a company where we wanted to do a pilot at the time, and basically the company was not this early adopter mindset, and I didn't figure it out in that meeting, and they wanted to get stuff, and we were like, yeah, we can do that, and in the next 3 to 6 months we will deliver a lot, and then we didn't deliver that, and they were really upset at the moment, and we had a lot of discussions. We extended the pilot for free, so we kind of tried to fix it, but eventually the customer called, and we had even, it's a very large chemical company, nothing that's public, so it's not any of the public stories, but large chemical company, and we had a call with their CISO, so the Chief Information and Security Officer, so big guy, and basically they were in the call, and it was all good and bad, and then they said, okay, either we don't pay you for the pilot, because there was still an open invoice, or we just stop working with each other, because you didn't deliver the results that we wanted. And we were like, yeah, we promised you a pilot, we didn't promise you results. Now, yes, the pilot failed, but you still have to pay for the pilot. And they didn't want to do that. And then we said, okay, but then you need to pay. And then they were like, okay, then that's the end of the business relationship. And since then, we haven't worked with that customer. That was just hard cut, also from their side. And these moments, they shape you, that, you think about how much oversell can you and should you do. You should always do a little bit of overselling, because you will also improve the product. But it needs to be in a bit, if you have a 6 months lead time, do 6 months of overselling, not 3 years.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a good metric.
Thanks so much for sharing this so honestly and openly. Now, you do a lot of pilots at the beginning, right? And when you negotiate these pilots, how can you already make, or what's a trick to increase the chance of a full rollout afterwards?
I think so there are different type of pilots or POCs, or also called POVs, proof of values, I think, whatever you call it. I think whenever you're at the stage where you really want to test the technology's functionality in the real world, which was for us 3-4 years ago, then the next step is not necessarily how to say that. It's not something that you need to get commitment for next steps, because you go out there, you prove it, and you get a stamp. Maybe the commitment is that we can talk about that the technology works. So you get that proof of the concept. Whenever you're beyond that stage, you think the technology works, then if someone else comes and says, I want to test if the technology works, you should say, we don't do POCs, because you can ask that customer, and that customer will tell you that the technology works. So the next step is we want to do a pilot or a proof of value or something like that. And if we do that, you will invest money to do it. We will invest time to make it work. But if it works, we want to continue, because we're not going to spend 6 months, jumping through hoops and doing a lot of stuff to get it to work, unless we have some prior commitment that it will continue afterwards. So setting up very clear success metrics. What do we want to achieve during that pilot? What is also, what do they need to see that they will then go on and order something afterwards? I think that's super critical. Also, already talking about what's going to happen after the pilot, especially around pricing, around business model. We often, so we did often two things. we said we wanted to sell a robot, but then the customer was not willing to sell to buy the robot in the beginning. So we might have agreed on a pilot, but they already knew that there's a robot purchase or a robot as a service contract waiting for them at the end, and then you maybe discount some of the pilot into that purchase to incentivize it. But there's a clear path of what's going to happen after the pilot. And I think during doing pilots, you obviously, since those are 12 months long pilots, the technology evolves, and you find out that some of the stuff that you wanted to achieve, you might not be able to achieve, but you achieved something else. So there's also a constant negotiation and interaction with the customer needed to kind of make sure there's a customer success component in it, but there's also a little bit the sales component in it all the time to make sure that you get the right people involved so that it's a seamless transition. Maybe last point on that more from a business model perspective, what we figured out, so there's two different kind of models how you can do that. You can say there's a pilot and then you buy the solution. That's quite a big hurdle after the pilot because they still need to say yes. What we've started to do is that we sell a 3-year contract and we say there's an exit option after 6 months. So you can get out after 6 months, no questions asked if you don't like it. But obviously you haven't contract that's running, so you need to quit and you need to tell us. And once you do, and early on we had 1 or 2 of those cases where customers was not happy with the first 6 months, then you say, okay, wait, we don't want you to quit on the contract. Let's give you another 6 months where we just continue and then we talk again. So you keep the customer deployed and using your solution versus they say, I didn't like it, I'm off, and then he tests something else and then maybe comes back 3 years later. So I think this exit option, then having a longer contract versus just doing pilots, that has helped quite a lot to kind of keep the ball going.
Great. Okay. And now let's talk a little bit about building a kind of a high growth team and organization. What were the most critical first hires when you started scaling the sales organizations?
I think over the last 3.5 years, we scaled from, I think, 4 or 5 people in the whole commercial team when I joined to roughly 45, 50 right now. I think one important thing is, and I did that even before I joined. I think I joined in October. I did that in September before joining, is kind of building a plan. What will the organization look like? And it was just post at Series A that you led. What will the organization look like post Series B when we raise hundreds of millions and will be a huge company? And kind of building a target organization where we say, if I have, and I think at the time I sketched down 60 people in a commercial division, what will that division look like? Because then when you start hiring, you can either already hire specialists if you can already do that, or you can hire people that have the potential to kind of grow in such a role versus just, I need a sales guy, I hire a sales guy, and then 3 months later I figure out I need a sales team lead, and then that's difficult when the person doesn't know how the sales works at this specific company. So having that longer term plan is, I think, is relevant in breaking it down. So I think I had 2 or 3 steps. So get from 5 to 15 to 30 to 60, something like that. And it's now looking back at that plan, I actually did that, I don't know, 1 or 2 months ago. We're not that far off from what we have today. It's probably 50% right, 60% right. But at least we had a direction where to go. I think the first hires is, I think from a sales perspective, really making sure that we have really strong sales execution, but also people that can build the sales process. Because at the beginning, when you get from founder-led sales to an actual sales machine that you want to scale, you also need to build the process around it. And you start from scratch there, and you just take experience that people bring in. So having people on board early that know how to scale or how to define such a more enterprise-grade kind of process, that was relevant. Then it's a lot about having people with the right kind of mindset that, working in a startup scale-up is not the same as working in an enterprise that has already made it. So having people that really want to get hands-on and get stuff done, but also bring experience, and that's usually the challenge, because when you want to scale, you want to bring in more experienced people that are better than what you already have, bring more expertise into the company, but still having people that are hands-on, and that's kind of a difficult mix. So having the right mentality, and then I think it's a lot about specialization. In the beginning, you have one salesperson, so when you want to hire 3 more salespeople, you need to define, how are we going to split? Or is it going to be regional? Is it going to be vertical? Is it going to be key account and landing? Is it going to be SDR and account executive? And these kind of decisions, there's probably not one universal right or wrong, but you need to figure out how will you specialize the team when it grows, because you won't hire just 50 people all doing the same. And I think that's an important one.
And how important is the technical, kind of deep technical knowledge of a salesperson in a deep tech kind of company and product?
I would say the knowledge is, so there's probably three different areas of knowledge that you have in sales. One is, you know the product very well, so you're deeply technical about it. One thing is, you know the customer problem and the vertical or the plant where you sell to, whatever it may be, very well. And the third one is, you know how to sell. And I think the latter two are more important. You need to know how to sell. And that's intuition also. So there's some people are very junior. We have people on our team that have just joined sales a year ago, but they're best salesperson of all, because they just have the right intuition. They follow the right processes. So that someone having been 20 years in sales is not necessarily better in selling. And so being good in selling, and knowing and understanding the customer and being curious about what does the customer situation look like, because it's a difference in product. You need to really deeply understand the customer, and then you need to build the right product. In sales, you don't need to understand it that well, but if you only repeat what product gives you and says that's the customer problem, you are selling and you're not solving a solution. So you need to be interested in, okay, you customer, I know exactly what you need, but let me still try to figure out what you actually need. And if you have that curiosity, you might learn something different, and that just gives you the angle to then sell, right? The product knowledge, I think if you sell deep tech, it's probably higher than if you sell kind of low tech, because you still, it's part of a trust relationship. You talk usually to technical people that are buyers. So if you don't know, for every technical question you're like, I don't know, I need to ask someone else, then you don't build that trust relationship that you actually know what they need. And so I think there's a certain threshold that you need to get to. But it's probably third next to the sales and customer problem curiosity. Yeah.
So do you have a process when a new salesperson starts to really get to know kind of the product and technology in detail, or?
Yeah, we have. By now, we have kind of a good onboarding program where everyone, gets a lot of material to go through. We have a big field team. So nearly half of my organization is customer success and field engineering, deploying robots. So they know a lot about what's happening in the field. So tandeming people up with the field team, going on deployments, meeting customers, and then also there's a lot of the whole sales playbook. What do we call it? We have multiple playbooks. So there's an outbound playbook, a sales playbook, a customer success playbook. So all these playbooks, those are written down in our tool, so people can actually really beef up and see how it's done. Then there's a lot of product enablement. To read about the product and get hands-on training. I'm a big believer also that the salesperson needs to be able to use the product. Now that's easier for some products than for others. Our robot is not that easy to use yet. Getting better hopefully soon. But if you're not technical, still you need to be able to go to a fair, bring the robot and show it around and know everything about the user interface, because otherwise it looks like it's very complicated. Yeah. And also you don't really understand the product. So there's a clear onboarding plan for everyone for the first couple of months to do that. I think that's important. You can scale it only when you write it down and kind of do it that way.
Let me jump to the next session, because I really want to have enough time also to speak about this. It's about AI in sales, and it's a kind of it's a newer topic, and there are a lot of AI tools popping up to empower sales. And I know you have been experimenting with some of them. Could you tell us what exactly did you try to automate and improve with AI?
there's actually, I think, even a session on that later somewhere here, so I'm going to sit in there to also learn. I think one of the kind of to start with before going into what we did in detail is, I think it's a bit of a mentality or a perception topic as well, that you don't just replace a process with AI. I think many people that think about AI agents is like, okay, I don't know how to do outbound, so let's get an outbound agent. And I think that's not usually going to work. What you probably can do is that you need to have a full process end to end of what you're doing as a commercial or go-to-market organization. And whenever you do that, somewhere in that process you will have a bottleneck, because people spend too much time on, I don't know, writing down their meeting notes or whatever, doing outbound, cannot call enough, can't prospect enough. And whatever the bottleneck is, that's where you can look into and say, how can we leverage the team to just be much faster in that process step and remove that bottleneck. So for us, outbound has been one of the bottlenecks, because the team is closing and they're hunting and talking to customers. We have some inbound. So actually calling people and doing prospecting takes a lot of time. So we started with an AI SDR, basically, which from our ICP list, clearly in our account books, we clearly know who we want to target. Since it's B2B and large enterprise, there's not thousands of customers, so we kind of know who to target. Giving that as an input into our tool to say, okay, now these are the personas. You want to have the safety guy, the maintenance manager, the operations person. Find these people at those companies, do some research, and then if you find some, there's a lot of outbound tools. If you find those contacts, go on their LinkedIn profile, look at what they talk about, and write the personalized outreach email. And it's actually quite amazing. I think we've been testing it 4 or 5 weeks now, and that new engine has created one new book discovery meeting every week in one territory. So we have one salesperson, we activated and piloted it, and that salesperson now gets one discovery call from that doing nothing every week. That's good for us, because we don't need hundreds of discovery calls. We have a big lifetime value. So basically we just almost entirely took the outbound work away from that person. Now, you need to optimize it, and that's the challenge with AI. You think, now we got it, and it's easy to start, but it's really hard to master, because then you need to figure out, maybe the message is not that good, and maybe it's outdated now, and do that. So there's a lot of work to be done there. But it's really, you replace a bottleneck and put AI there, and then you figure out what's the next bottleneck, and then maybe meeting notes is the next bottleneck. So we tap that, and I think that's probably how you get easiest some early traction.
Okay. So in terms of AI tools, you mainly tested now the SDR kind of tools that are available.
Well, SDR we're rolling out now, so that has been proven very valuable so far. We've been testing a lot. So
which one did you specifically? Maybe someone is interested.
So we're using Apollo. Apollo is one of those tools that enriches data in your CRM, and then also helps you to do outbound sequencing and cold calling. There are many on the market. We've selected that one. We're quite happy with it. They now, inside of the tool, they have that functionality that you can do that AI prospecting. So we're building that. There's other tools on the market. I think the most prominent is Clay, that everyone talks about, that kind of does the similar thing on enrichment. And we looked at that. We looked at many, but since we already have Apollo, we figured let's see whether it works there, because all the AI agents and the tools, they kind of all do the same. Ultimately, they use generative AI and some information, and they build something with it. And some are a bit better than the other, but it's only half the work is done by selecting the right tool. The other half is you need to actually tune it the right way, and that you need to do with every tool. So we started with Apollo. We now, I think, what are the most, So we're testing an AI outbound caller. So this is only email now. So we're also looking into, can someone actually call if you give the number? And I mean, there's a lot of voice thing already, but does that work? Is it actually good? Does it ask the right questions? So that's what we're testing. Many different tools. I don't know all the names now. And then there's meeting notes. because there's a lot of meeting note, Google, but there's tons others there. How can you use those to transfer that notes into the right structure that we need, that we can get the information out for a business case or something else? So we're testing. Every time I log on a call with my RevOps team, there's like 5 note taker logging in as well. So it's kind of funny. So that's what we're also doing. And then there's a lot of ideas beyond that on that side. But there's a lot to do there. That's
amazing. And if you were to advise now a very early stage tech startup, how would you advise them to use AI to speed up the early sales?
Probably I would say that kind of tailoring your solution, what you build, and the problems that you've understood, to connecting them to bigger business problems that a customer has. So usually when you reach out and you talk to a middle manager somewhere, that person has there's group strategy from those enterprise customers, and whatever that person does ultimately feeds into those bigger themes, and being. And that you can research, that's public usually for enterprises. You can go through all their annual reports, takes a lot of work, and kind of connecting and saying, okay, what is the strategy of the company? What's the pain points we've understood? What are we selling? Build a good proposal that we can connect what we do with the pain point that person has also to the bigger picture, that he can also sell it internally and say, okay, there's the CFO actually, his focus is this. And what I am actually doing here is helping me, but it also helps the CFO, and then I get a better message. So completing the picture there for multiple different personas, that's probably something that AI could easily help in the beginning. Automation, I'm not so sure. You need to first, again, you can't, if you don't know how to do it, it's hard to automate it.
Yeah.
You need to first do it, and then you can scale it, and you don't hire more SDRs, you just hire more AI agents. That's fine, but you need to at least have one person that knows how to do outbound, otherwise you don't tune the tool right.
Yeah.
That's
All
augmenting and not replacing in a way.
Okay, that's a great insight. So let's go to a quick fire round. Last questions from my side. What's harder, generating leads or closing deals?
Probably closing deals, I would say, in Deeptech.
Then the biggest oh shit moment in a sales cycle at ANYbotics?
So many, I don't know. I think one of the biggest thing in enterprise is that whenever you sell something, and the business is all 2 thumbs up. There's a lot of legal and procurement and cybersecurity in our case, and tons of other stuff. And the business always is, we know what we need, but they don't. And then you're like, okay, that deal is going to close, and then suddenly it takes another 3 months because you hang up in some of those loops, and it's hard to forecast it. That's usually in almost all those cases. It's kind of okay, yeah, we knew, but it's just. We couldn't really tangle it a little bit better.
Okay.
Maybe that.
And what is one book or resource that you would recommend anyone trying to learn Deeptech sales?
I'm a big fan of gap selling from Keenan. That's a sales guy that put the book out that talks about the gap that you have from the customers today and the customer, what he actually would like to have in the future, and how you sell that gap. He's a perfect motivator. You can watch videos of him online, you crack up, and he's one of those US sales guys that like you listen to him 30 seconds and you're all in. Great book. Talks a lot about the philosophy of how you sell, and it's not that common already, I believe. It's
okay.
It's a couple of years old now, but it's not like one spin selling and tons of other sales books that you find when you say top 10 sales books. I would recommend that.
Great, thanks so much. Any questions from the audience? Yes.
As you're cracking the Deeptech code, how do you define Deeptech in one sentence? So how do you define Deeptech in one sentence?
I would define Deeptech as technology that has very deep engineering in it, a lot of IP, a lot of complexity, and solving kind of new problems by connecting very, very different old kind of solutions as well. But
I mean, from our side, we define Deeptech as technology that was basically built in a university in R&D, and then it and then is commercialized.
I think lot of technology and not something that you just hack together in an afternoon. No, so it's a bit mean because obviously all the other work is also takes years to get there. But I think there's a lot of research and you're creating a new kind of category very often when you do deep tech.
You had a question as well, yeah.
In your reach out, you said you're targeting C-level executives, decision makers. How do you weigh off volume with personalization, or do you weigh it off at all? And what would you say is in your domain a volume you need to gain traction?
So we target very different levels when we do outreach. So it's very often the actual user of the product that we help solve a problem. It's usually so our product it solves time, but it also gives good data. So it's also who gets the data. So we target those people. We target health and safety people. Then always on multiple levels. And then I target more the C level. So in my outreach, it's usually very generic. It's, hey, our teams are talking. We should discuss what that means on a strategic level because, obviously, it's not about selling one robot. It's about your strategic thing of reducing accidents and how can, stuff like that. So it's not extremely personalized. I think personalization is misinterpreted also very often. It's kind of, hey, we went to the same school. That's not personalization. It doesn't matter whether we went to the same school. I think it's better to really focus on the problem and talk about the personalized problem that you expect someone might have. And that can be the same for all the health and safety managers you target, and you talk about that. That's personalized enough, I feel. So don't overcomplicate it, in my opinion.
Thank you. I have two questions. First is about the pricing. If you are one of the only suppliers in the market, so you would set the price cheap to let many people try your product and bring more traction later on, or you would keep it very high and just blocking them, and basically that's the question, first question. What would be the strategy? Second one, in hiring. Imagine you have a customer, you need to do some technical work to deliver, but in your network, you have access to mediocre people. You would just hire and deliver it to the customer to get some good money, or you would wait a bit and delivery for the later time, but target for the star people for your team later on. Tough
Big questions. I think on the pricing, that's difficult to say very universally. What I would say, very often you're not the only player in the market. You might be the only player doing what you do, but you very often, when that's the case, you do something very new. And in that case, you don't replace a problem that hasn't been around. The problem is there, you just solve it in a different way. So usually companies solve it in a different way today, and you would solve it in a new way. And in that sense, when they solve the problem, there are many different competitors to you. Maybe none does the same thing, but they could also not do anything, do something, go with someone else. So I think there's always this, we're a monopoly and we can put the price here, but also there's alternative solution. Where's the price there? And I think I would gauge that probably a bit. On the hiring side, I firmly believe that if you want to build a really, really excellent team, you need to have excellent people on the team. And if that takes a bit longer, then probably it's better to wait a bit longer to get them and not hire some you said mediocre people, but I think it depends a lot also on what you need. If you need more execution, then maybe on a junior level you could hire more execution effort, but then you need to freelance in maybe some strategic and team management to split it up a little bit. If you really have urgency that you need boots on the ground to engineer something. I think maybe last thought, very often companies think they need to build everything themselves. So there's also agencies and providers that actually you can outsource delivery to. So maybe you start there and you try to hire a couple of really good ones to bridge the gap there.
Thank you so much.
Any further questions? If not, then we will wrap up the session. And thank you so much, Enzo, really for sharing all this insight and your experience in selling Deeptech. What really came out from me, for me was really this importance to, it's not at all about just the technology, but really listening hard to the market, to the customer, ask questions, understand the specific problems. And also a lot of people, obviously, aspect. And so thank you so much for joining this session. And if you want to continue the discussions, Enzo and me are still around. And otherwise, enjoy the rest of Startup Days.
Thanks a lot.